Welcome to the Classical Yulefest, a merry flight around the world of classical music. I'm your host, Kensho Watanabe, and with me are my jolly companions, Tifa-la-la-la-la-la-ni-lu, and Will I Am Dreaming of a White Christmas. This week, we'll start by following up on some unfinished business. Then we'll delve further into the holy trinity of classical Christmas music. And finally, we'll review the new film version of West Side Story. But first, we like to start with our prelude segment. Ho, 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 ho. So, Will, what do we have today?
For this week's Prelude segment, we're going back to Classic FM, the veritable Christmas stocking hung above the fireplace. And what do we find within? A list of 13 gift suggestions for the classical music lover. All right, first up, we have a great composer's jigsaw puzzle. What do you guys think of this? Would you want this?
I'm a jigsaw aficionado. I mean, if I had to pick a jigsaw, this probably wouldn't be it. I'm a little masochistic about them. So you know those jigsaws that have like just sheet music? Like the entire thing is the same. What pieces have they used? I don't even know. But like that's the jigsaw I want.
Interesting.
Is there one of like the manuscript of Chacon or something like that? You know?
Probably. I mean, that could be done easily enough. You can probably get that printed yourself.
Yeah, I also became a jigsaw enthusiast during the pandemic, like when it was just me and the four walls. And you know what the hardest one that I did? It was called, oh gosh, it had this special name, but it was all gray. A friend of mine loaned it to me, like complete, just monochromatic with the craziest size pieces and stuff like that. But this looks like a lot of fun. Looks like you got Dvorak here, Tchaikovsky. Florence Price is on this great composer's jigsaw puzzle. So it's a modern version here. So yeah, I think this is a good start to the list. Tiff, why don't you cue up the next one?
Yeah, so the next one down on the list is musical socks, by which I suppose they mean socks with cute caricatures of composers on them. I mean, the Mozart socks are the ones that are displayed here, and Mozart's head is positioned at the toes looking up at you. So yeah, sure, why not?
I like this. I think socks are a good gift. I mean, I guess that just proves that I'm like an old, boring person. But yeah.
You can never have enough socks. That's just what I think.
I think we're 2 for 2 here. I think these are both pretty strong gift ideas.
Well, okay, so let's look at the next one here. The third one is the Classic FM Family Music Box. Now, what is this exactly? It says, featuring wonderful stories behind composers' lives and works, press-to-play music clips, and beautiful illustrations that bring it all to life, the Classical FM Music Box is the perfect introduction to classical music for the whole family. I feel like I'm doing an ad read for our podcast.
Yeah, why aren't they paying us for this? Come on, folks.
But I still don't understand what it is. It's
okay,
so basically...
I clicked through. It's a book, like a physical book, and you open it, and there are sound chips that you activate by pressing buttons that will have, excerpts from the selections. They include our Vespers by Monteverdi, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, Magic Flute Birdcatcher's aria, Beethoven 5, Peter and the Wolf, and a number of other, The Planets, Swan Lake.
Would you buy this over the Dan Brown?
Oh, the Dan Brown book that we reviewed on, what was that, episode 2 of our show?
Because that was like with an app or something, right? Where like if you had it like on the page, then it would like play the music that's supposed to go along.
This is obviously more convenient because it's all built in one. And I have bought my niece stuff like this, like classical books where you push the buttons.
I mean, maybe this is aimed at a slightly older clientele, right, than the Dan Brown, I would say.
Yeah.
I have 2 new nieces this year, so like my gray dating of the human development is like a little bit finer than it has ever been at other points in my life. So Dan Brown is definitely for like, we're talking, maybe ages 2 to 3, and I would call this like, you want somebody who can understand words that mean something in music for this. Right. So 5
but
to
this
6.
could be
but
good.
This looks beautiful.
Yeah, it looks very nice. All right, well, number 4 here is the Classic FM Puzzle Book 365. It says, do you know your Chopin from your Schubert, your concerto from your cadenza, your ballet from your Baroque? Now's the chance to finally prove how much of a classical music aficionado you are. Try the brand new Classic FM Puzzle Book 365. From quizzes to word searches, logic tests, and missing symbols, there are plenty of classical conundrums, I would say classical conundra, to keep the mental cogs touring the whole year round. This sounds right up my alley, I gotta say. You know, I mean, I do the crossword puzzle every day. I love it. I love this.
I wondered the difficulty level of this, though.
Yeah, exactly. So the question is this for musicians who have like a grounding, or is it for more like, you'll be really happy to know that Mozart died in X, Y, and Z year and like composed this many, you know, sonatas or things like that? You know, is it trivia or is it something else? I'm curious. Let us know, listeners. Number 5 on the list, a classic metronome. Oh, this is pretty. I mean, it says, help your friends keep time with a beautiful mahogany-colored metronome, and it has a photo of, one of these very old school, the ones where you have to slide the pendulum up and down the, what do we call it? The shaft to get the different tempi.
Yeah, it's like, it's like a grandfather clock, essentially, an inverted grandfather clock, if you'll all remember correctly.
Yeah.
Do you guys, either of you own one of these, and would you want one of these? To me, this is a little bit like it's it's like a pretty little bit of furnishing.
Yeah, it's a shelf decoration.
Yeah, but like in a practice, I mean, it has, as I think we've discussed on the show before, there are certain advantages, the visual aspect of watching the.
Yeah, and there are disadvantages like getting confused as to what is halftime versus double time.
Yes, there is that, of course. And CGF 1.
Or reading the top part instead of the bottom part of the slide.
Shout out to the first episode ever of Classical Gabfest. But, I don't know. To me, something like this, it's a little bit like CDs. Like, I'm not accepting new CDs into my life. I have enough stuff. It's like, I like the fact that the metronome is just on the phone now. Mm-hmm. And but this is very nice. I mean, I don't think this is a bad idea. I mean, I wouldn't get it for myself, but if I received it, I think I would be like, wow, this is really really a neat thing to have.
Right.
We need to get a sponsorship here. Okay, so the next one is Classic FM Christmas cards. So the illustrations are actually quite nice. It says, we've teamed up with illustrator Rosie Brooks to create beautiful, bespoke Classic FM Christmas cards.
Yeah, these are nice. They're probably blank inside. They're fine. I don't think that they're anything too special. I think you could get,
No, and it's very
Christmas
like
cards.
just general Christmas fare.
I have to say, I have found a renewed appreciation for greeting cards in general. I mean, I think for a few years they were trending downwards in terms of, people are writing emails now, and it's just faster. And you go to stamps and the post office, blah, blah, blah. But I find one of my, the reasons that I get stuck inside CVS sometimes is because I'm busy looking at the greeting card aisle.
Greeting cards are a lovely thing to receive, and some years I send out Christmas cards to a pretty large list. This year, but
which years, Will? Because I don't think I've ever received one.
I think yours must have gotten lost in the intercontinental mail between the United States and Paris.
Seeing as it's my first Christmas in Paris.
Yeah, interesting. Well, anyway, I'm not doing them this year. Anybody who's on my list, so if you don't get one, don't be butthurt like Kensho here. All right, what's next here? This is mine. The nation's favorite carols. So this is is this a CD or something?
Yeah, unfortunately, Will, even that you're now not accepting CDs into your life. Like the rest of this list is pretty much half albums.
Oh, interesting. Oh, well, but it's a gift to tell somebody what to listen to on Spotify. So
when we give out a whole lot of gifts over the course of the year.
We damn well do. Yeah, that's right. So this is the nation's favorite carols, and it's the City of London Choir and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Hilary Devon Wetton. This would not be top of my list, with special guests Bryn Tervel, Grace Davidson, and Tristan Griffiths. I'm sure it's lovely, probably not up my alley.
Okay, so the next item on the list here is John Williams, A Life in Music, and the tagline says, "To Christmas doesn't mean only Christmas music is allowed. We have a wonderful collection of the very best pieces from peerless film composer." I mean, seriously, who doesn't, already know how all these go pretty much immediately and can just, look them up on Spotify whenever they want to? Why do we need an album for, I guess, your, great aunt who doesn't listen to Spotify or anything, so she can just, have it in her car?
Yeah. These two strikeouts here.
We're not really loving the CDs so far. All right. So I guess this is one that's related to the first gift, which is now a great composer's notebook that looks like the same artwork on the front of the notebook as the one that was displayed on the jigsaw puzzle. Mm-hmm. And it seems nice. I don't know if I would use it.
Yeah, this is I have no idea what else to get you.
This is the kind of gift that I would receive from a family member that wanted to get something nice for me, knowing that I'm in classical music, but they didn't have any idea how to do that. So it's like, here, It's got music stuff on it. It's for you.
I think a blank journal is, I have many of such things. I find them very, I'm very compelled to buy, I love a stationery store.
I have a very great weakness for stationery, but I would not carry this notebook around.
No, yeah, I wouldn't either. All right, next here we have another CD. This is another Carols disc,
La la la.
St. Paul's
next.
Cathedral Choir, which this would be more up my alley because this is more like the beautiful, church music, Hark the Herald, once in Royal David City, which is very famous from St. Paul's Cathedral. They're not so famous for this. It's really King's Cathedral. Anyway, I'm sure that this is fine, but again, just okay.
Will's not accepting CDs into his lives, folks.
I am not. I'm sorry to say.
Musical instrument bookends. Okay. I mean, I don't think that these are particularly attractive, but I'm down with the idea.
Yeah, they're not. They're like okay. These are okay.
I like something a little bit more modern and a little bit more polish. Like I'm not so much into the antique-y kind of, raw clay kind of finish.
Yeah, and
But
these are
that's a
from
personal taste.
these are from Wayfair. I mean, no shade to Wayfair, but most of what's on there is like basically just really cheap crap. So I would wonder if these really have the they do look. I mean, so it's like it's hard to describe exactly, but they've got a right angle aspect to them, and so I imagine they would probably be pretty good at holding up books, which not every quote unquote bookend is actually good.
Oh, but can I actually talk about a design aspect of bookends, which is that I don't think it makes sense to have bookends that don't have the counterbalance underpinning to them, because all they're going to do is slide at a certain point if you're actually using them as bookends instead of decorative end pieces.
Yep. And classical music themed things don't have to look like they came out at the same period as the classical music that we listen to. It's kind of where this one has just kind of falls short. All right, next is yet another album. This is by Aled Jones. Do you know Aled Jones? Never heard of Aled Jones.
Never heard of him.
He seems very chipper to be sitting in a snow-covered step on some kind of building, I guess, and holding a
record
LP record of whom? Is that like him as a boy
him.
or something?
Yeah.
Great. Moving on.
yeah. This is weak. All right, and the final thing is another record. This is, it's like these Brits. They're so, I don't know, they're so parochial with all of this stuff. So this is assumedly another British musician, Craig Ogden. His album Christmas Time is just the right thing for you or a loved one. Partial to a bit of picking, because this is a classical guitarist, I guess. Includes chestnuts roasting on an open fire. I don't know. They could have done better on the album selections here.
Are these like classic FM produced records?
Yeah, of course. Well, but half of the gifts on this thing, I mean, there were like, what, 2 things that were not classical FM merch? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What do we expect? Come on. They're not a charity. They're trying to, keep classical music commercial venture here.
I mean, the real question is, what are they saying about Jonas Kaufmann by not including him in this list?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we might have something to say about that a little bit later.
Okay, before we go on, I think that I had things that, if you want to buy gifts for a musician in your life, I have a couple recommendations.
Oh, I want to hear this.
So one is, some people have those magnetic pencil holders, the ones that stick to the stand. There's a really nice one by a firm called K&M, and it's just a magnetic ring that goes around your pencil. And this thing is awesome because you can just throw your pencil at the stand and it will stick. It's so useful. And then correspondingly, Will, I know I can ask you this question. What pencils do you use?
I use a pencil called the Magic Writer from Pacific Music Papers. And I'm very particular about it. And I actually, the erasers start out okay, but then over time they get too dry. So I rip off the erasers and I have a separate group of erasers that I keep in a plastic baggie in a drawer in my desk. And they are doled out one at a time when I start a new pencil. What about you, Tiffany?
I use Blackwings, which are nice because they have the replaceable eraser,
right?
That you can buy, and they're very
Stephen
sleek and
Sondheim's pencil of choice, I should say.
Okay, so now I also use Blackwing, but Tiff, which Blackwing do you use?
I like the softer ones. I'm not, for me, I like softer pencils in general. You have to sharpen them more often, but for me, it's like the erasable eraser is kind of the replaceable eraser is a big deal.
Yeah, that's true. Those are nice. Yeah,
what about
definitely you? Team Blackwing over here. Yeah. I use the what is it called? I'm looking at it right now. It's a 602. It's got a gray.
Oh yeah.
It's gray instead of black.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to receive pencils as gifts, especially if they're black.
Yeah, same. Okay. And I have to show you guys.
What in the world is this?
Did you make this?
Is this a new Yu-Gi-Oh's creation?
It's my new favorite toy. Listeners, it's a lyre. And you can Lyre.
Yeah.
And you can get I think this like specific cheapo, toy version of this. First of all, it's extremely passable. Like, it's hollow on the inside, comes with an extra set of strings and a carrying case. This is nice. But it's like on Amazon for like what, $60 or something, and it's like I'm having the most fun. I mean, it sounds like okay. I can tune it whatever way I want to, and I can do whole tone like flourishes. I'm having the greatest time.
Great gift idea. And that does bring up the fact, like, the Yu-Gears hurdy-gurdy. That would be a great gift, right? For like the former Lego child.
Yeah, instead of the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. It's like a big 3D jigsaw puzzle. Anyway, yeah, okay, great gift suggestions all. This is very fun. And Tiffany, thank you for coming prepared to give us some real what. So I should say here that just about does it for this week's Prelude segment. But before we wrap up, we'd like to remind our listeners that we do periodic listener-generated Name That Tune rounds. So we invite you to try to stump us. Check our show notes where you'll find a link to the forum where you can upload a 30-second clip of an unidentified piece of classical music for us to try to identify. And with that, we move on to our first topic. Tiffany, what do you have for us?
Each week on the Gabfest, we bring you stories from the world of classical music, and we wrap them up into neat little packages of 10 to 15 minutes. But as you can imagine, there's often more to say, or threads to follow up on, or parts of our discussion that got left on the cutting room floor. With that in mind, today we've got one of our unfinished segments in which we follow up and flesh out some of our earlier discussions. So why don't we go round robin here? We have a number of recent headlines. Kensho, why don't you start us off?
Well, back in episode 25, during our news segment, we covered a bizarre incident in a French theater. Was it in Toulouse?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think, in which a stagehand was charged with tampering with a set in a manner that could have resulted in the lead tenor being killed by a rock weighing 200 kilograms. The stagehand, referred to as Nicolas S., denied the charges, and now the court in Toulouse found that Nicolas had access to the computer program which controlled the hanging rock and decided that he had interfered with it as part of an ongoing dispute with another stage staff, an effort to frame someone else. So Nicolas, I guess, was found guilty and was given an 8-month suspended jail sentence in order to pay 1,500 euros for legal costs. This seems pretty chill as a response for attempted murder and trying to frame a colleague, don't you think?
Yeah, French justice system. I don't know. Maybe you can get away with attempted murder over there. But maybe we just have this very skewed American perspective from this culture where we mete out punishments that are probably...
You know what I think we need now is an opera about this.
Mm-hmm.
How meta would that be?
Yeah. All right, well, interesting. Here's our next update here. It says, it's no secret that our podcast was a pandemic-era passion project. For those who have been with us since the beginning, though, here's a tribute to our August origins from back in 2020. And a hilarious update from episode 2. Oh, this I loved. So our second episode was called Stuck in a Room with 1,000 Recorders. And we were talking about music education concerts where, the kids, they all learn how to play the recorders. They bring the recorders to the hall, and then they play along with one of these songs as part of Carnegie Hall's music education program. Well, thanks to Twitter, we found this amazing picture, which we will link in the show notes, from Our Lady of the Lake Catholic School, which reports that their COVID-era solution to the ordinary aerosol and germ-rife environment of the grade school music class recorder unit, instead of using their mouths to blow, they use rubber chickens. This is amazing. So they have these rubber chickens, which basically they're making tiny little bagpipes is essentially what's happening here. So the chickens, they have an empty air cavity where, if you squeeze it, it's like a dog's toy or something, right? You squeeze the chicken and it pushes air out from its mouth, right? And so they insert the recorders into the mouth of these rubber chickens, and then they play. I mean, it looks like the chanter, I think is what they're called, right?
It's like
on
a
a bagpipe.
demonstration of how to make foie gras. Like,
Oh, that's
it's
so
literally
sad. You're right. It is. It's like reverse foie gras. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very sad.
Well, and you know what else is also like unintentionally like a little disturbing is that the way they have to hold these rubber chickens is on their shoulder with the recorder
looks like
sticking
they're
out of
holding a
it like a
bazooka or
bazooka.
something.
Yeah, it looks like a straight up like rocket launcher from Halo.
But what I'm really interested in is because the rubber chickens also make
noise. Yeah, that was my
noise
question.
as the air is being expelled from their bodies. So like, what are we doing
though? But
here?
I mean, that's assuming that they have like a squeaker in them. or
Have you?
something.
Okay, we need to do a segment on rubber chickens then, because these all make sounds.
Maybe they found ones that don't have squeakers in them.
Or maybe they surgically removed them.
These pictures are just amazing.
Yeah, they
they're
are
to
amazing.
die for.
You've got to look at these, listeners. They're very. I mean, the kids are very cute. And,
There are just so many different techniques that are being employed. There's one picture, the first picture that's on Twitter. Like everyone's kind of holding it like the bazooka way, and then there's one girl in the back that's got the recorder between her legs, and then she's just ramming the chicken down on the recorder.
That's great.
I mean,
I love it.
whatever
I love
aerosol
It's too
spreading
bad.
is being prevented by usage of this is surely being offset by the amount of laughter in the room.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Although the
Everyone
kids don't
looks
look like
very
they're.
serious.
They don't look like
Yeah,
they
I
look
know.
very
The kids
serious.
are-
Serious and diligent.
I mean,
But I'm
that
laughing.
just makes it even more funny somehow.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. Oh,
Okay.
this gives me life.
Next headline. We paid homage to community music stores and mourned the seeming passing of Guitar Center back in episode 15. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last November. However, seems that meanwhile people started buying guitars like crazy, and now 2022 is forecast to be apparently the biggest year of guitar sales in history. So, Guitar Center's sales this year will reach a record $2.5 billion, and on top of that, they filed for an IPO in mid-October. So that was less than a year after filing for bankruptcy. Yeah, cool.
Very nice. Okay, there's your Christmas gift. Don't get a guitar CD. You get an actual guitar. Much better
Right.
gift.
I was just going to say that, during the discussion of the Guitar Center restructuring or with the bankruptcy, we were talking about how there was a music education aspect to it. So I wonder if now with the success of the IPO and all this stuff, like how is that going to affect people's lessons and all that stuff? Like how are we going to roll out more music education stuff or not?
Let's hope if you got more people buying guitars and, wanting to learn how to play them, probably freshly, that seems to only want to redound benefits to the music teaching community. So,
I mean, one of my questions is how long is the virtual aspect going to stay, part of because that was a big part of breaking down the entry barrier for music lessons. So I think that it will be interesting to see who will keep that model.
all right. Next up here, oh boy, so this is more of a serious one. In episodes 11 and 17, we followed the case of Stephen Ships, a retired University of Michigan violin professor who faced allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment towards students across multiple musical institutions over the course of a 40-year time span. Last month, Ships pled guilty to transporting an underage girl across state lines for sex back in 2002. He faces up to 15 years in prison when he's sentenced next February.
Alrighty, and following that, we have some news about new posts from conductors. Friend of the show, Natalie Stutzmann, who visited us in episode 29, was recently named music director of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra next fall, and she's, of course, the first woman music director of the Atlanta Symphony, and also only the second to be at the musical helm of a major American orchestra. So congratulations to Natalie. And another conductor who was nice enough to visit us, Ludovic Morlot, talked to us in episode 45. We'll be moving his home base the other way across the Atlantic to the Barcelona Symphony Orchestra, National Orchestra of Catalonia. So congratulations to both of our friends of the podcast.
Yeah, I have just one thing to say to both Natalie and Ludovic. You're welcome. It all adds up. They come on the Classical Gabfest,
They got a new job.
and next thing you know, they're getting big positions internationally.
That's what it
I
is.
mean,
1-to-1.
Yep.
All right, and finally, how remiss would we be not to give a hearty nod to Jonas Kaufmann, as he has now released an extended double album edition of It's Christmas. Let's just take a second to appreciate this.
Just like the ones I used to know. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it
yeah,
snow.
Kaufmann coming out strong with the campaign for the new double album. He has released so many YouTube videos. You know, there's some of them are like live performances. There's some more goofy puppet shows. There's some more him in like weird tuxedos. They're trying to milk this Christmas thing for all that it's worth. Kermit the Frog himself.
All right. Let's wrap up that unfinished segment and call those topics maybe finished. On to our second topic. Kensho?
If you're with us last year for our holiday special, you may remember a segment on the Holy Trinity of Christmas music, in which we covered Pyotr Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker, George Friedrich Handel's Messiah, and Leroy Anderson's Sleigh Ride. Well, this year we are revisiting these oft-performed works, but from a slightly different angle. We're calling this the Holy Trinity of Classical Christmas Part 2, Classical Christmas Gone Wild. We've gathered 3 particular takes on these Christmas classics from YouTube, and we'll react to each one. Listeners, the first 2 videos are quite short, so if you want to pause us here and check out the links in the show notes, now would be the time. All right, so first we lead off with a compilation, let's say, of Nutcracker performances, and the YouTube video is aptly named the Buttcracker.
Yeah, this is like ballet fails, basically. It is like a America's Funniest Home Video level of just people, you know, doing pirouettes and falling on their butts. Some of them are pretty entertaining. I mean, some of them are very basic, and in every case, it looks like everybody's fine, so it's okay to laugh at, I think. But, you know, you have to respect their professionalism for just jumping up immediately after they have these spills. You know, I don't know much about ballet, but this is pretty funny.
I mean, if you think about it, ballet is pretty much the art of putting human body in the least balanced position and asking them to keep their balance. So I have to say, they all pale in comparison to one of my favorites, which you will find, listeners, if you go onto YouTube and search Nutcracker Stage Fall. And in it, oh my God, I
we
like
should watch
every
this?
Yeah. Can I screen share this for you,
Yeah,
or can you guys
yeah.
look it up? Okay.
Let's watch it. Oh my God.
So wait, what just happened?
I mean, like,
Is that what's the character's name?
That's Drosselmeyer.
Did he just?
I mean, I've always imagined Drosselmeyer to be like some like vagrant that's just like drunk off the street, you know, just like has magical powers. So this totally is within the character.
So he just wandered over the lip of this directly into the pit. Is this right?
Yeah, and also what I find amazing is that the orchestra completely just
Yeah,
kept
I
playing.
wonder
Like he
who
must
was-
have landed on someone. Like
Or it wasn't a live orchestra.
Oh yeah, that's actually
You know,
probable.
it could have just been over the sound system, and because I don't think that I think that he actually just fell onto the parterre level. I don't think that there was actually a pit.
Yeah, but it looks for all the world like
It does look like
he
it.
just. I mean, there's like, every time I watch this, I notice more details that make it more hilarious to me. Like, I mean, he like covers his head with a cape. He does this little hop, and then he like turns and runs like headlong over the lip of the stage, and then he, like everything like you can see on stage. Like normally in all the Buttcracker clips, like everybody else is like doing their gamely best. They like absolutely do not break, right? The whole stage is like, what the do we do right now?
this is the funniest thing is watch the guy that's playing. I'm assuming the father. Mm-hmm. As soon as he falls, the guy literally just turns around upstage, clearly, obviously, like either just in shame or just like laughing his head off, and just could not. Like he literally just turns like about face and just does not interact with what's happening on
And
the
then
stage.
like when he gets back out and he like takes this big old bow with the cape on. Oh my God, I die.
This is way better than Buttcracker for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will become the main link here. This is what you gotta see.
Yeah. All right. Well, the next one is a unique perspective, let's say, on Sleigh Ride. This is Sleigh Ride from the trombonist's perspective.
Okay, this is my favorite. I love this. This is 2 high school kids. They're seniors. It says in the video description, our first playthrough of Sleigh Ride. So obviously this is a school where the band plays Sleigh Ride every single year. And they've got their phone, on the stand. So they start it rolling right before they're about to start playing. This to me was the antidote to those like super earnest Swedish teens that we talked about last week. This was just like American bro bonding back in the brass section. So first of all, they sound great. I mean, they really sound good. And it's a great band. Like you can, like, if you look in the details, like in the background, it's one of these bands that has like tons and tons and tons of those novelty trophies. Like they've been to all of their competitions and to their, festivals or whatever. And then there's these other 2 kids, the layer back that are percussionists, and they're aware of what's going on and they're trying to keep a straight face. The 2 trombonists are trying to keep a straight face. But, you can just tell that they've come up together through like the ranks of this high school band program because they've like done all this little choreography. Like whenever the whip snaps, they like snap their heads in time is very, very charming. And then, like, just the level of sophomoric humor here. My favorite detail is right before the band is about to start, the one trombonist just leans in and he whispers the word penis into the video. Like, this is what teenage hijinks should be about. This was great. I loved it.
I mean, it looks like just the back row of a high school orchestra, right? It doesn't look like anything than that.
I was transported back, in a good way this time to like my own adolescence and just having fun with music. And, I mean, this is like, did you guys ever play at Monteschool, like Light Cavalry Overture or William Tell? And like, the strings all do their like horsey up and down kind of thing. It's just silly stuff like that. It's very fun.
Right. And then like, they hit all their entrances and they sound good too.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were just fooling around and not sounding good. Like they were still like being professional in some aspects, I guess. And then, having a little bit of fun on the side. So.
Although I do have to give them a little bit of a hard time. Did you count how many hair flips that he did?
I know, very teenage boy. Yeah, the
he
hair
has
flipping.
This like one of these kind of like long like K-pop haircuts, and I think it's probably in the 20s by the time the piece ends.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a fun one. And finally. I had forgotten about this next clip for a very long time, and so Will or whoever found it again, thank you for bringing this back to us. So this is, I don't know if many of our listeners know about this, but this is...
Probably not, because I didn't.
Oh, well, this is a 90s... What do we call this thing? Reimagining of Handel's Messiah, but it's... You just have to listen to this. I mean, what clip will we even choose to kind of show?
Oh, the trumpet will sound for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you said that the 3 clips were long, but like, yeah, the whole Young Messiah, this is called the Young Messiah, and the whole thing is like an hour long. But the thing that people need to watch is the trumpet will sound. I mean, we'll link them both in the show notes.
Shall sound, and the dead shall be raised, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible.
But yeah, I mean, so this is like a reimagining of the music of Messiah with rock orchestration and sort of gospelized vocals. It's just updated to like a then contemporary as of approximately
right. You
1990.
say updated, but this is 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
And...
It is. I mean, it is so dated. It is dated beyond belief, and it's very like I think it's aimed at an evangelical audience.
Yes, it's the whitest thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's even though there are some black people, it's the whitest thing.
It is the whitest thing
world.
I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Is that so? Okay, so updating it and like making it then current. Is that why they call it the Young Messiah? Because that name is a little weird to me.
Yeah, it's for the youth. Electric guitars.
I do appreciate whoever is doing the bass guitar in all of this, because it's the little like those kinds of little touches that get you from key area to key area. Like, it's all it puts you right in the time period. That was one of the things I actually really quite enjoyed listening to, because there is skill in finding where to put those touches.
That's right. And at an execution level, and even at a design level, like they did what they set out to do.
Yeah.
Frankly, don't you wish that we had more examples of this to go off of? I mean, these days I feel like incorporating classical music. I mean, one thing is, yes, okay, it's an hour long, while the Messiah itself is like 2.5 hours long. But the numbers that they select, they do in their entirety. They don't change any. There's no cribbing. There's no sense of like, let's just have this one stanza and go into the next. So that's something that if this were done today, I feel like would inevitably be the case. Like, people would shorten them by 2/3 or more. And so that's something I kind of, all the lyrics. Oh, I like the way that they redo the recits in this. They don't bother singing them, right? There's just like a guy proclaiming the words of all the recits. I enjoyed that too.
The other thing to say about it is just that, like, the style level, or I mean, what comes off as a total lack of style now, but I mean, it just screams late 80s, early 90s, like in everything that they're wearing.
All the mullets, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty
really
awesome.
A relic of its time.
And now, since you mentioned that it was released as evangelical music, I mean, I don't know anything about evangelical music, but it seems so boring to me. It's really all the same chord change. I mean, this is I scrolled down to the comments and read some of them, and people are saying, well, like, this was always my favorite, evangelical album growing up. This is I play this every single Christmas. And it's like, man, if more church music was more inspired harmonically, or at least like with detail instead of just soup, I don't know. That would do a lot to recommend the entire genre to me. But
key point.
My first exposure to this was like a bunch of my like friends from, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. Like, we would just like send each other random numbers from this, mainly Trumpet Shall Sound, especially during the holidays. It's almost like we were talking about Christmas cards. Like, it's almost like a Christmas greeting where you're like, happy holidays, and you send this link, and it's like Trumpet Shall Sound, or like whatever it is. It's just like, it's always just brings a smile. So I appreciate this.
Yeah, put it on while you make your Christmas dinner.
Well, this turned out to be quite a different rendition of the Holy Trinity of Christmas, but I hope you enjoyed it, listeners. Moving on to our third topic, Will.
In a manner of speaking, this next segment is also an unfinished topic, because it was back on episode 36 of the Classical Gabfest that we reacted to the trailer for Steven Spielberg's new adaptation of the Broadway classic West Side Story. Well, now the movie's out in theaters. We've seen it, and we're ready to share our thoughts. But first, let's listen to a clip.
That Puerto Rican punk will go down, and when he's hollered uncle, we'll tear up the town.
We'll be in back of you, boy.
Right.
We're gonna flatten them good.
Right. Womb the tomb,
Sperm the worm.
and then we'll have us a ball tonight. We're gonna rock it tonight. We're gonna jazz it tonight.
Of course, the great strength of this show has always been Leonard Bernstein's ingenious score, which has become a part of the classical canon, particularly through orchestral arrangements such as the symphonic dances from West Side Story. As this is a music podcast, we'll mainly be talking about the score in this new version, but first we should just get a few quick reactions. What did you guys think of the movie overall?
I thought it was great. I feel a little bit having to qualify this opinion for me, because it's not like I knew the show that well. Of course, I knew the score as based off, as from my knowledge of more or less the symphonic dances. Actually, I've done this all backwards, and I had to have a friend explain to me a lot of the changes that they made. But from the way that he described them to me, like, all of those changes were with integrity and kind of in homage style. I do think that the style of all this, the choices of casting, obviously, but also the little plot points that got finessed along the way, like they all do a lot to pay homage to the original, like, in a real authentic way. I think it was really well done.
I was struck by just like how, I mean, obviously it's not a big surprise since it's a Spielberg film, but the cinematography is really great. Not that the old version lacked that, but there's just certain things that you just couldn't do back then in terms of the cinematography. And this, like, I think all the transitions and even like the balcony scene, how it's shot and stuff, I just like, or the right before the rumble, all the stuff that was actually in the trailer, how it was shot. I thought those were all really great touches. And I especially also appreciated, I don't know if Will agree with me on this, but like how they used Rita Moreno in this, I thought was actually really, really well done in terms of how they incorporated her into the story.
Oh, I quite agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I thought this was very good. I have a director friend who says of Spielberg that every shot is a flex, and I see that. You know, I mean, I thought that there were some incredibly beautiful moments, like on the sort of the puddles on the black top when Tony sings Maria. The lights casting down. That's really amazing. There's that shot that we talked about from the trailer where the two gangs are coming in, and there's that overhead shot of the shadows, interacting, the lengthening shadows, which is really cool. Yeah, I loved how Rita Moreno was used in this film. Taking the role of Doc and inserting a new character in that role.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, in terms of the script changes, the new script is by Tony Kushner. There were three geniuses who made West Side Story: Leonard Bernstein, Stephen Sondheim, and Jerome Robbins. And then some people sometimes say that there was a fourth genius, but it was really sort of a fourth guy, and that was Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the script. Now, I do think that the script of West Side Story is generally pretty good, and that Tony Kushner would not have been able to make it what this movie is without that grounding, without that baseline. But in a way, I almost think that Tony Kushner's script for this movie is like too good for the material. He is a genius. Like, Kushner's the fourth genius here. I mean, he's the playwright of Angels in America, which is this astonishing, work of genius. But no, I know this score and this show incredibly well. I've music directed 2 full productions of it, each of which had like probably 10 show runs. So I think I've conducted this score more than any other piece of music. And I really liked actually the structural changes that they made. They moved Cool before the Rumble, and they made it a song for Tony, which I thought was a great choice. So yeah, no, I thought it was very good. I thought that we might get to now the vocal performances. Any thoughts about those?
Beyond the quality of the performance itself, which I'll kind of leave to the two of you, because I think you have probably more ear for that, but I do think that this was some of the best voice syncing. Like, it really looked as if they were singing that stuff on the screen, which we know is not the way these things are generally done, right? I mean, you shoot the scene, you have them say the lines, and then most of the music is added in afterwards, and often by somebody who's not them. And this was them, and it's good. The syncing is really true to what's happening, and you wouldn't know otherwise necessarily if you didn't know that was the way things are done.
This sounds bad if I just lead up with what I'm going to say, but let's just say that I really, really liked the Maria, which is Rachel Zegler. Is that her name?
Yes,
and
Rachel Zegler.
Also, and Mike Feist, I'm assuming, as Riff. I thought Riff was also just fantastic. And I also liked Anita. So I'm getting to the point where, like, Ansel Elgort, I really like him as an actor, but this is where, even with the voice syncing that Tiffany was talking about, you could tell that this was not his strong suit, right? Like, this was him being hired for this for his acting prowess and just the fact that it just worked visually. But it's not to say that he didn't do a good job, but compared to the other vocal performances, you could tell that he had to work to even get to that level,
I couldn't agree more, Kensho. Yeah. First of all, Rachel Zegler, a total apparition.
Star.
Total discovery. I can't imagine a better Maria.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate about her is that, like, so the problem to me with Broadway singing right now is that it's all poppy, and admittedly, like, most of the music on Broadway now is pop. It's just straight up pop, and so okay, fair enough, yeah. But even when Broadway singers now do a revival of a classic show, which was written for a different style of singing, they're just
belting
make it
into
pop.
everything. Yeah.
Well, it's not even belting. It's like, they do those little scoops and little kind of quasi riffs and stuff like that, and they just have that poppy quality. What I found about Rachel Zegler's performance is that she makes it sound modern, but without sounding poppy. And I don't know how she did it, but she did. And it's just, she just has the perfect voice. And her acting was exquisite too.
Make our lives one life, day after day, one life. Now it begins, now we start
I agree with you that Mike Feist as Riff was an interesting choice. I mean, he was a different.
It's
riff.
not the riff that I would imagine.
Yeah.
But it worked so well.
But
for
it
me.
does
Like,
work.
I was just like,
Yeah. And Ariana DeBose, who I understand has quite a following. She's on like some TV shows or something like that. She was great as Anita. Yeah, Ansel Elgort. Tony's a really tough role to cast, and I have a feeling that since they were going for these unknown, Rachel Zegler, total unknown, and Ariana DeBose and Mike Feist were, lesser, like Broadway actors or, some TV credits. Obviously, they wanted somebody with, star power in the role of Tony. But then to find somebody who can also sing, potentially supposed to sing a high C, but, have a legit tenor sound to their voice, that's really tough. I mean, I'm sure that they could have gotten somebody from Broadway that would have been way, way better, but, might not have sold as many tickets. And I don't know that this is really selling that many tickets. So
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It kind of
Yeah.
flopped.
It's
at
not
the
doing
box
very well in the
office.
theaters.
And probably some of that has to do with the new wave of COVID that's going around, but and also just that like this is a 1961 musical that maybe not that many people care about, but I certainly care a lot about it. Anyway, so I think that we're all on the same page with the vocal performances. What about the sound of the music, the orchestral accompaniment? This is talk about luxury casting here. You've got the New York Philharmonic with additional music by the Los Angeles Philharmonic, all conducted by Gustavo Dudamel. How did that come out to you guys?
Yeah, I think it sounded great. I mean, Will, educate us a little bit on what changes were made to the score per se, like the prologue and stuff. Is it all the same? Because when I was watching this new version, I was kind of like, was this in the first version or not? And I was kind of confused because it didn't sound like it was the same, but maybe it is.
They made little adaptations because, of course, and even they had made adaptations from the stage version to the original movie in 61. Right. Because, they just, you have to have some different stuff going on. You've got shots of different lengths and stuff. I mean, this is all very practical. In order to do those, they had some new arrangements by David Newman, I think, part of the great Newman clan of, famous film score composers. And also, I don't know if you caught this in the credits, also listed is John Williams as special music advisor. So again, it's like, sparing no expense. And of course, like, he's Steven Spielberg's guy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there were a few little changes made here and there. Overall, very faithful to the original orchestrations. Interesting about this movie, this is the first time ever that Leonard Bernstein is given the primary credit as the orchestrator of West Side Story. Now, here's the story there. On Broadway, the composer usually does not write their own orchestrations. But Bernstein, being a symphonic composer, he basically wanted to do the orchestration, but when they're in rehearsals for the show, the composer has to be there working with the cast, figuring out what key people are going to sing in, developing the dance arrangements, just making sure that the music is going along, as it's supposed to. So Bernstein's solution here was he would start every day in the morning meeting with the two orchestrators who are generally credited, Sid Raymond and Irwin Kostal. And they would meet at the beginning of the day. Bernstein would point out every line in the piano score and say, this should be in the violins, this should be in the oboe, blah, blah, blah. He would give them all the instructions. During the day, they would then enact, they would actually do the scoring of it. And at the end of the day, after all the rehearsals, Bernstein would come back, meet with them again and say, oh, well, actually, this should be in the cellos, this should be blah, blah, blah. And he would fix it. So he was essentially guiding the orchestration, even if he wasn't enacting it himself, writing all the notes on the page. And so usually those two guys are given the credit as writing the orchestrations. But in this movie, Bernstein gets the actual credit because in a way, it's credit that is due to him. I think that an interesting comparison when we're just talking about the orchestral sound of this, is to listen to Bernstein's 85 recording, which he did with opera singers, which is considered like one of the great travesties of all time. And there's the very famous documentary that was made with Bernstein like shouting at Jose Carreras and Kiri Takanawa sounding like she rolled out of bed in the morning, and Tatiana Troiano sounding completely absurd as Anita. I mean, it's just, people should watch that documentary. But that orchestra sounds amazing. Handpicked players from the Philharmonic and freelancers, handpicked by Bernstein. And, the tempi are a little slow, but they sound like $1 million. And then more recently, in 2014, Michael Tilson Thomas did a recording with the San Francisco Symphony, which is a real favorite of mine. He gets that orchestra sounding amazing. And obviously, I mean, he was very closely tied to Bernstein himself. But, they get like, Broadway-style singers for that. It's not opera people. So that's a great recording, too. But this is very good. I thought that the orchestra, just like in terms of the recording, like some of it could have been given a little bit more punch. In a way, it's like the same thing I said about the script. Like New York Philharmonic playing this stuff, it's like they're a little, especially in the brass, they're a little too perfect, a little too polished sometimes. Like I would like a little bit more of the edge to the sound. But come on, these are very tiny nits to pick here.
Having just come off of a fairly major recording production gig that I had, it's very hard to let blips like that go. Like, you don't know where somebody is going to be like, oh, this was so perfect, if only they hadn't blah, 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 blah. And it's the producer's job to catch those things and patch them. So you're right, like the crazy trumpet solos, like I would have loved a little dirt in there, right? But it's all perfect. It's all note perfect. And you know that that's not how it came out. I mean, for me, from a production angle, like I would have liked to see what bits of dirt were left in to retain the spirit of it. Yeah,
well, speaking of that trumpet, so there are these screaming trumpet solos, right, in the Dance of the Gym. And they got, this definitely is not somebody from the New York Philharmonic playing the trumpet on those solos. Interestingly enough, those solos are in the second trumpet book in West Side Story, and they are ostensibly written for D trumpet. And you can understand why, because like that's a higher key, right? So you think that's to play the higher notes. What I have learned through doing West Side Story is that the real screaming trumpeters out there, they're like, no. We play this on B flat. They want the fat ass sound in there, and if they can play those notes, they can play those notes, basically on any horn.
Yeah, go see it, and in the theater, I just feel sad that it's not doing better than it's not. I had the whole theater to myself, the entire theater. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was awesome. It was big screen, food, and all that. But yeah, see it and stay for the credits, because some of the best music is during the credits.
Fantastic. Well, a hearty endorsement from the Classical Gabfest crowd. All right, folks, it's time for a classical mixtape, I think.
In our classical mixtape, we each recommend some music that's caught our ear this week to share with our listeners. Let's start with Kensho. What do you have this week?
All right. Well, we talked about the holy trinity of classical Christmas music, and this one might have a place up there. It's one of my...
I mean, it depends maybe where geographically you are, but like it's so wonderful.
This to me is like what I always want to listen to during the holidays. It's not like completely a stereotype of the times. This is Engelbert Humperdinck's Evening Prayer and Dream pantomime from Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, it's just great. So here we are. Happy holidays. This performance is by the Orchestra of the Royal Opera House with Elgar Howarth as conductor.
There's nothing better. And the whole opera is amazing. You know, it's
Yeah.
Wagner Jr. It's the orchestrations are phenomenal. The tunes.
Wagner with more innocence.
yeah,
innocence.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I've had fun with my lyre trying to pick out like every tune on the face of the earth. I got exactly, half a phrase into that one. Of course, then there starts to be chromatic stuff and you can't play anything anymore. But anyway, I can get the first one, seven chords
Nice.
on my lyre. All right, let's go to Will for our next recommendation.
All right, Christmas music is quite a plethora of choices here, especially from a choral perspective. I am going to go with a composer who is a very important composer, and I think I've talked about him, but I don't think I've ever recommended his music on here. This is music by the English composer Herbert Howells, and this piece is called A Spotless Rose. Herbert Howells is, I think if you're going to know one composer of the English choral music tradition from the 20th century, Herbert Howells is like the really important one to know about. And, he wrote especially a lot for organ and choir, and probably some of those are like his more important pieces in the genre. But this a cappella choral piece, A Spotless Rose, is a Christmas classic, and it's just a stunner.
Great. Okay, well, let's round out our Christmas week celebration on the mixtape with a Renaissance version of a set of variations on Greensleeves. I've been listening to music for Renaissance lute and the lyre since getting my toy, and so this is a fun set of variations, in fact, where the theme is actually hidden quite a lot of the time. I don't know, I quite enjoyed this. This is a performance by the Baltimore Consort. You'll find the links to all these and to our full classical mixtape playlist in the show notes.
And with that, it's time to wrap up this episode of the Classical Yulefest. I'm Kensho Ho 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 Watanabe, and on behalf of Tifa La 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 Lu and Will I Am Dream, I'm done with this. I'd like to thank you so much for listening and to encourage you to subscribe and rate us on your podcast app. We'd also love your help spreading the word about the show on social media, where you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can reach us at classicalgabfest@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Ho 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 ho! Until next time, merry listening and happy holidays!
Slipped into a little bit of Dracula there as well.
Oh, good job, Kensho.
Thank you, thank you.